Well, welcome to another edition of the History Files. And today is kind of we're going to go looking.
Yes, we're going to go on a mini adventure.
Yeah, and we're not going to go far. It's just about a mile down the road here. So that shouldn't take us too long. Now, if you watched a show that we did about a year ago.
Yeah, it's already been that long.
We were talking about the Temperance Hall.
Yes, on Square Bluff.
And I've lived up here since 1975, and I remember your in-laws talking about this Temperance Hall, and I thought, a Temperance Hall?
Well, and we were actually able to find some pictures of it.
Yeah, we did, and you found one that one of your husband's relatives had.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an amazing story because it was called, of course this is all in Norwegian, it was the Upper Plum Creek Total Abstinence Society.
Okay.
And which meant no drinking.
No drinking.
And the people here, this was 1897, they felt so strongly about it in this neighborhood, these good sober Norwegians, that Oliver Narveson, who had the farm down all of the crossroads down there about a mile, he donated land for it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to get in the car, and we're going to drive a whole mile down there and poke around and just see if there is anything left of it.
Well, there is. It'd be nice to find even just a little bit of foundation.
Yeah.
Because it was rumored that that building potentially may have been moved. Was it not?
Yeah.
The history's unclear.
Right.
But we're going to go and grub around, and who knows what we'll find.
Yeah. Hurry up, humans! Hurry up! You're so slow! You're such a show-off, aren't you? Just because I can't run up and down the stairs like that.
Zip gets to go with us on a road trip. I wonder what we'll find.
Well, she's probably hoping we find some
Sheep.
yeah, deer that she can chase.
Oh, yeah, she's excited.
Oh boy, here we go.
She likes to come on her little road jaunts. What fun is it to stay home?
And I say, if you hear heavy breathing, that's not you and I, that's the dog.
Here we go. Yeah, the remote studio sure has worked well for us.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun, and we've got to go all around the county, and we've looked for things, and we couldn't do that if we were tied to a studio.
That's right.
Okay, we're coming down here to the crossroad. And at the crossroad, Mary, if we would go left, we would go down into Plum Creek. To the right, we would go down into Irvin Coulee. If we stayed straight ahead, we would eventually come down by Independence. And I looked on the old plat book, and in 1914, it was not just a four-way here. There was also a fifth road.
A fifth? How could they jam one more road in this space up here?
If you went straight,
okay,
you went along the top of the ridge, and then you came down and wound up where the Ryan farm is down there on County Q.
Okay.
So there was actually 5 different roads going off here.
Busy neighborhood.
Yeah, I guess so.
And it also looks like it's part of the bike loops.
It is. The poor people struggling by, just pedaling uphill.
Look at that. We'll do a little bit of Trumpealeau County
You bet.
promotion.
It's a beautiful bike loop, and you get some exercise. So behind us, Mary, it's all growing up now, but when I first moved to this neighborhood, it was clear. And that was where the Temperance Hall had been. They said that the Society for Not Drinking started in 1897, but 4 years later, they built this Temperance Hall. And it was a real community active spot because it said that they had singing, and they did little skits and plays, they had speakers, they had debates. It was apparently, if you lived around Plum Creek and Square Bluff, that was the place to be.
And what was the opinions of the parents?
Well, that
Or
was...
was this just, just for adults only?
No, apparently, that picture we have, there's a lot of young people in front of the Temperance Hall. But like we said before, it was controversial because what they thought was at that time, if you were a young man or a young woman, if you weren't at school and if you weren't at home sleeping or doing chores, that's where you were supposed to be. And these young people like to come down to the Temperance Hall. And they just thought, the parents seemed to think that this was not a good deal because those kids needed to be at home working. But even in the early 1900s, young people like to get together and be sociable. So let's walk up here and see what we can find. Oh, I'm sure. Now the article that I read said that by the time Prohibition came around in 1919, the Temperance Hall wasn't getting much activity anymore, and that by 1936 it was discontinued, and we don't know exactly what happened. Someone said it was torn down. Somebody else said no, they hauled it into Independence. So we don't really know where the Temperance Hall went. And I don't think it had a basement. It was probably just up on, a foundation. So I'd say by the size of some of these trees, they're not that old, but like that one's maybe a little older, or that one, and down there. And there's some pretty big stumps up here, so that must have been some pretty good sized trees at one time. And I don't ever remember this being pastured or anything. It was just that bare spot where the Temperance Hall had been. This is pretty flat here, so I'd like to think that maybe that was in here.
She's looking for it.
Yes.
I hope to find it.
This is a real flat area where something could have been, because when you look at that picture, it was a fairly good sized building. I mean, it wasn't teeny tiny. I would imagine it was pretty basic. I don't suppose it had, well, we know it didn't have electricity, and it probably didn't have plumbing. But I've got a 1914 plat book, and there was a picture, it was noted on that plat book where the Temperance Hall was. And I have looked through the old plat books, and I cannot find any place else in the county, at least out in the country, where there was another Temperance Hall. So this was kind of a one of a kind.
Is that like a stump hump over there?
With
the moss?
With the moss. Zip, come here and dig this up. I don't know if there's anything down below this or not. I don't see anything.
No, it looks that, like I said, you know, sometimes
Yeah.
you get a stump that.
I thought maybe that we'd find like some rocks or something.
I was thinking like a cornerstone maybe. Oh, wait a minute.
Nancy, my name's Nancy.
Wow, down here we've got a stone.
Okay. Oh, maybe we're on track then.
Here we've got a stone.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the middle. Oh, there's more stones.
Yep.
More stones. Look at this.
That's a pretty big solid
at
one,
that.
and there's more of them too. Yeah.
And there's more.
Oh, ahead of us in a straight
I bet
line.
we found parts
Yep.
of it, huh?
I bet we did.
Okay, let's try to get through these trees without wrecking the camera.
Or yourself.
Oh, look at this. May have been part of a foundation.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it, doesn't it? Here's a rock here, and they're definitely in line. Here's another one.
Look at that.
Yeah. Huh. I bet we've... Sharp eyes, Mary. Good for you.
Look at this.
Yep. Well, look, right here in this line here, Mary. Here it is. See, right ahead?
Yep.
That's it. That's the foundation.
Wow. This
Yeah.
is pretty cool.
I'm amazed that we found anything.
Look at this. This is definitely man-made.
You bet. And it looks
And-
like, yeah, if you follow along, you go back here, there's some pretty big ones.
Look at this. Look at this. We found the wall. Say that. We found the wall.
We found the wall. We found the wall. Look at that. Here's a big one. Well, it's kind of like a pile of stones here. And then there's a big one over here.
Wow, this was sizable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these are definitely manipulated stones.
Right. These just did not just happen to naturally occur
In this
here.
Nice little row.
Yep. Very
In-
definitely.
In the middle where there is no other rock that looks
That's
like
right. And there's a big one here too, so I'm sure that must have been like the corner. And then I can see under the brush here there's some more going up this way. I have to look up this
at
way.
that.
Yeah. Huh. Well, that's something I didn't know if we'd find anything. That's pretty good. And thinking about it, let's see, I know it was your father-in-law, Edward Anderson, used to talk a little bit about it. And of course, my dear neighbor, long gone Gary Everson, he was talking about how his relatives would come up here and they were preaching temperance. So it must have been it's just kind of an idea of all these Norwegians that got together because they believe so strongly in not drinking, which was probably kind of unusual in parts of this county. You know, I'm just saying.
See if you can find. Okay, we've got one.
Yeah, I wonder if it is up here. If I can get through this bunch of trees that are down. Yeah, there's more rocks here, Mary.
Okay.
And up here. Because we don't know, I'm assuming it probably faced west, but we don't know that.
I'm just amazed that we found these.
I am too.
And this must have been part of another wall back here.
Yep. And right below you here, there's some more rocks. And up here, oh, here's more rocks in a row, Mary. They are definitely in a row here. And they look like rocks that have had some manipulation. They're all squared off. And I can imagine that most of the...
Headed now here.
Here's the other line. And there's some trees that are kind of laying on here, but that would match up with that other big rock, like maybe this wall there and then a wall here.
Yeah, because here's more.
Yep. And this rock here, like I say, it's looks like it's been squared off and everything, so I'm sure that's
So
part
we got
of it.
three sides of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would assume it was probably just enough of a pedestal to set the building on.
Yeah, yeah. It probably wasn't anything too fantastic anyway. And there's more rocks that go along in a straight line here. So it must have come up this way. And I'm sure all the debates and singing and lectures were probably all done in Norwegian.
Do you believe we found it?
Pardon?
Do you believe we found something?
Yes,
I think that's way cool.
I definitely do. I can see through the tree here. There's some more rocks that looks like these old trees are laying on, but here's more rocks here, and they're in a line. So we've got at least, you know, three sides here. Because these rocks would not occur in a straight line like this, I don't think.
Not all flat and walled off. Like
No. Here's more right here where the dog attacked some oak leaves. So this must have been the other. Well, there's three sides. And there's another big rock up here. I guess that's the first one we found, wasn't it?
Yep.
So this is where this must have been the fourth side and then ran down there. So it was a pretty good sized building.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that picture you found is such a fun one because everybody's all dressed up. But you notice that there are a lot of young people in that picture. And the one boy out front is standing on his head and having a good time. And, well, let's think, you know, back around 1900, 1915 in there, where did you go if you weren't home working or to school? Church, but a lot of these churches here only had services once a month because they shared a pastor with some other parishes. You probably didn't go to town that often, and there probably weren't that many social occasions. So imagine having this Temperance Hall here where you could get together, and you would think the parents would be okay with their kids going to the Temperance Hall. It wasn't like they were going to this dance hall or something, but they were going to the Temperance Hall. So it was probably a place, a real social place.
Do the victory, arms up, we found it.
Yeah, V for victory, we found it, we found it. So, I've only seen that one picture of the Temperance Hall, the one that you had. But I had found some other little pamphlets and remembrance booklets that talked about, you know, the Temperance Hall and what the program was and everything. But it must have been pretty lively. They said they had debates. So that would have been great fun, I would imagine. They said before they built the Temperance Hall, they met at the schools. And there was one down the road there. There was the Irvin Cooley School. And if you went to the other direction down here, there was the Upper Plum Creek School. So by putting up here, they were right in the middle. So that was really a beautiful strategy. Yeah, there's quite a few stones here yet. Well, and who knows, if we got in here with a bulldozer, maybe we'd, who knows what we find. Probably not much.
This would have been the front wall.
That could be, like the front steps or something. Because if it was moved, I was thinking about that today. You know, that was something that was done so commonly back then. They moved buildings and houses all over the place because they didn't waste them. You didn't let something go to waste. And back then you didn't have to worry about disconnecting the electricity or the plumbing. I'm sure you did not have to get any kind of permit from the county. You just probably came and jacked it up and put it on some wagons and set off with the horses and moved it to wherever it was supposed to go. I had some people tell me about a big farmhouse over in Lewis Valley that they moved back out of a little valley over a big hill. So yeah, they moved things all the time. It must, maybe it wasn't that big of a deal, but I still think that's a pretty good thing to do. They certainly didn't waste anything. But how neat. I guess I always thought it was a little farther up that way, but I don't know why. But here it is.
Now that you've got me behind the sleuthing,
Yeah.
I can find anything.
Yeah.
Especially when I hide it from my husband. On purpose.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I'm sure they didn't have a barn for the horses to get tied up to or anything. They did. It was a pretty small shelter. But what a fascinating thing. And the whole idea of temperance back then, that was a real hot button issue, because there was a lot of motion in the United States then. A lot of people that thought that there was too much drinking going on and it was harming families. And the topic of temperance and not drinking alcohol was a huge issue. And we've heard stories about Carrie Nation, the lady that went out and busted up saloons with an axe and everything. It was very, very emotional. And Wisconsin was a state that was settled by a lot of Germans and Poles and people that, drinking beer and getting together, that was kind of part of the culture. So I think for them now, abstinence was kind of a very radical idea. But here's all these straight-laced Norwegians, probably all Lutherans, banded together for the idea of total abstinence.
So these rocks have been here 100 years.
Well, they said they built it in 1891.
Yeah.
Yeah, so over 100 years. Yeah. And there aren't any big trees that were growing in the center of this, so this is what it has to be. No, I think this is really neat. So apparently the only thing that's visiting the old Temperance Hall site these days are probably the deer. Lord knows we've got plenty of them up here. And it's just sandstone. That's what they used, the sandstone, didn't they, for foundations. Pretty common building material. You used what you could get. And after Prohibition went into enforcement in the United States, and it was considered to be a great victory for all the temperance people, all the abstinence people, but it turned out to be kind of a spectacular failure because it just seemed to promote a lot of crime. And they said in retrospect, yeah, it maybe did cut down on the amount that was typically drunk by people. Maybe that there had been some of that had gotten cut back. But for the most part, it really didn't work. And I always said I thought that the idea of prohibition where nothing was allowed, and my grandmother from New Zealand had said over there had also been a big temperance and abstinence movement, that the women said that the men were going to the pubs and drinking up their paychecks before they came home at night. So what New Zealand did, and I thought this was a pretty good idea and very pragmatic, they did not have abstinence, but what they did was they had the pubs start closing at 6 o'clock at night. So people were not out carousing at the pubs and drinking up their paychecks until the late hours of the morning. Yeah, it's a lot of moss there, but you can definitely see that these were put here in a line. The old Temperance Hall stones. And that had to have been like, some of these bigger ones makes me think it had to have been like a cornerstone.
Great.
And there's some pretty interesting stories in the county about moonshining. I don't know what else to call it. Illicit.
Make your own.
Make your own. And they talked about up in, like in Chimney Rock, up in there had been stills. And Dodge has all kinds of stories about people making, moonshine and selling it. So for some people, I guess prohibition was an opportunity, a business opportunity to make some money. Well, Mary, like I said, I guess the only thing that's visiting the Temperance Hall area these days are the deer.
Maybe a few squirrels.
Yeah, a few squirrels. Yeah, I'm sure. But let's think back, 125 years ago, there probably wouldn't have been any trees right here. If they were not very many of them, or they were small. It probably had a lovely view looking there to the west. It was probably a lovely location. And the Narveson farm, from where I'm standing, is due west, and now it's owned by the Ryans, but that was the Narveson farm. And this was a big Norwegian community. And right down the road here was the, it was the Gabe Anderson farm, right? And Mary's, it would have been your father-in-law, Edward and Mavis, farmed there for many, many years. That was the Anderson family farm. So I'm sure that they would have had connections to the Temperance Hall. And we really had to come looking for it now, before everything, before the leaves came out on the trees and everything grew up. It's a lot easier to find things nowadays when it's just starting to green up and grow. So people that are out here riding on the bike loop, they probably don't realize it, but they're going right by the old Temperance Hall. Yes, I did not fall in any ditches today. I hope that doesn't disappoint our fans. But thank you so much for coming along with Mary and I. And Zip, well, we looked for remnants of the old Temperance Hall. It was fun, and we actually found something. That's great.